Russia doesn't care about NATO right now. How do we know? When was the last time Vladimir Putin led off a major announcement or press conference talking about the war in Ukraine? At the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum at the plenary session, he started off with a long talk about the Russian economy, about BRICS, about that. That's what Russia's talking about. That's the direction Russia's heading. The same thing in the press conferences. Well, everybody else in the West is talking Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Putin starts off talking about the economy, talking about how to improve relations, geopolitical transitions, and then he got to the war. The war to them is an afterthought. It's there, but they're winning. They've got it under control. There's no panic. NATO is a fundamentally broken institution. What's going to happen? I don't know what happens when you're confronted with absolute failure, absolute collapse. I don't think NATO survives the decade. I really don't. It's a fundamentally broken institution. It can't afford what it's trying to do. Germany, who's secretly sneaking stuff off to Europe, as you said, they had to cut the amount of money they're sending to Ukraine. Germany's supposed to be the lead agency, the lead nation in NATO about redefining NATO to fight, to hold off the Russian threat. Olaf Scholz felt so strongly about it that he allocated 100 billion euro, I think last year, to jumpstart this transition of the German military. But as I've said before, if you don't maintain your house collapses. NATO is a house that hasn't been maintained. When your house collapses, the money that you think would be sufficient to bring it up to standard isn't enough. The 100 billion that Scholz put out isn't enough to fix the decades-long rot that has infected the German military. And so Boris Pistorius went to the German parliament and said, I need money. I need to increase my defense budget by 6 billion euro a year so we can, keep growing in the direction we went. He got 1.2 billion. That ain't even inflation. So the German military is shrinking. The British, same way, shrinking. The French, shrinking. The only army that's growing is the Poles, and that's the problem. Because the Poles are creating a military that, again, in and of itself can't confront the Russians, but the Poles believe that they've got NATO backing.
Scott Ritter is a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer who served in the former Soviet Union implementing arms control treaties, in the Persian Gulf during Operation Desert Storm and in Iraq overseeing the disarmament of WMD. He has testified before a combined Armed Services/Foreign Affairs hearing of the U.S. Senate, and before the House Foreign Relations and National Security Committees. He has spoken to NATO, the United Nations, and the British, Canadian, Italian, French, Iraqi, Japanese, and European parliaments. Covering Ukraine, the Scott Ritter Interviews Through the Eyes of Anya Kay is a unique and timely addition to the literature on the conflict in Ukraine. It offers a fresh look at complex problems that will empower and entertain the reader with new insights and sharp analysis of a war few understand. And this book's interview style makes that apparent. This is a necessary book full of thought and insight into war and geopolitics. Scott and Anya's conversations delve into the deeper, psychological reasons for what we see occurring in terms of individuals, nations, and history, making this book invaluable. There is no greater American authority on this war, the Russian military and the American empire, than Scott Ritter. This is his 11th and latest book.